Emergency truck repair in traffic. The insane risk mechanics take every day. Picture this. A massive 18-wheeler truck breaks down in the middle of a busy highway in Karachi, Pakistan during rush hour. Traffic is honking, drivers are furious, and the summer heat is pushing 115 degrees Fahrenheit. But instead of calling a tow truck like you'd see in America or Europe, something absolutely wild is about to happen. A team of mechanics is going to repair this truck right there, in the middle of moving traffic with cars and buses whizzing by just inches away. They're going to fix a damaged rear axle housing, one of the most critical and heavy components of the entire vehicle, using tools that look like they're from the 1950s and safety equipment that basically doesn't exist. What you're about to discover will blow your mind and probably make you never complain about your job again. Because these men are literally risking their lives every single day, crawling under multi-ton vehicles surrounded by speeding traffic, breathing toxic fumes, and working with equipment that could crush them in an instant. This isn't a rare emergency. This is their everyday reality, and it's happening right now as you're reading this. The breakdown happened around 2 p.m., the worst possible time. The truck was hauling a full load of construction materials, probably weighing close to 40 tons total. The rear axle housing, which is basically the metal casing that holds the differential and axle shafts together, had cracked. This is a catastrophic failure. Without a functional axle housing, the truck can't move. The wheels won't turn properly, and attempting to drive would cause even more damage and potentially a deadly accident. In Western countries, this truck would be immediately towed to a proper repair facility with lifts, proper lighting, ventilation, and all the safety equipment you'd expect. The repair would take days and cost thousands of dollars. But here, on this Pakistani highway, the driver makes a phone call, and within 30 minutes, a repair team shows up in a beat-up van packed with welding equipment, tools, and absolutely no safety gear. They're going to fix this truck in the next few hours, right here, regardless of the danger. Have you ever thought about what happens when trucks break down in countries without the infrastructure we take for granted? The repair team consists of 4 men. Ahmed, the lead mechanic who's been doing this for 23 years. Bilal, his assistant who's only 19 years old and learning the trade. Rashid, the welder who's missing 3 fingers from a previous accident. And Kareem, the guy who handles the heavy lifting despite having a back injury that never healed properly. None of them are wearing safety vests, hard hats, or steel-toed boots. Ahmed is in sandals. Rashid's welding mask is a piece of dark plastic held together with tape. They have no traffic cones, no warning signs, no barriers between them and the stream of vehicles passing by at 50 miles per hour. The first thing they do is jack up the truck. But they don't have a proper hydraulic jack like you'd see in a modern garage. They have a makeshift jack made from scrap metal and a hand-cranked mechanism that looks terrifying. Bilal crawls under the truck to position it while traffic continues flowing. One wrong move, one distracted driver, and he could be killed instantly. By the way, where are you watching this from and what's your name? I'm genuinely curious to know where our audience is tuning in from and what you think about what you're seeing. Getting the truck jacked up takes about 20 minutes of pure anxiety. The jack creaks and groans under the weight. There's no safety mechanism if it fails. Ahmed is shouting instructions over the noise of traffic, but Bilal can barely hear him. Exhaust fumes from passing vehicles are filling the space under the truck, making it hard to breathe. The asphalt is so hot you could probably cook an egg on it, and these men are lying on it, their skin getting burned through their thin clothes. Once the truck is finally elevated enough to access the damaged axle housing, they can see the full extent of the problem. The housing has a crack about 8 inches long. In the United States, this component would be replaced entirely. You can't really weld a load-bearing component like this and expect it to hold under the enormous stress of hauling 40 tons. But replacement isn't an option here. A new axle housing would cost more than these men earn in a year, and the truck needs to be back on the road today because the driver can't afford to lose work. So they're going to weld it and they're going to hope it holds. Rashid, the welder, sets up his equipment. His welding machine is ancient, probably older than Bilal. The cables are frayed and exposed in multiple places. He's going to be welding while lying on his back under a truck with traffic passing by, breathing welding fumes with no respirator, and doing all this with a homemade welding mask. The welding process is crucial and incredibly dangerous. If the weld isn't strong enough, the axle housing could fail again while the truck is moving, potentially causing a crash that could kill the driver or other motorists. If Rashid isn't careful, he could set something on fire, get electrocuted, or be hit by passing traffic. Before he starts, Ahmed and Kareem have to clean the crack area. They use a grinding wheel powered by a portable generator that's sitting dangerously close to the traffic lane. The sparks fly everywhere, landing on their skin, their clothes, the road. Some sparks land near the truck's fuel tank, which still has diesel in it. Nobody seems concerned about this, even though one wrong spark could cause an explosion. If this story is opening your eyes to the hidden world of roadside truck repairs and you want to support our mission to show the reality of working conditions around the globe, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support helps us continue bringing these incredible and important stories to you. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next investigation. Rashid begins welding. The light from the arc is blindingly bright, and he's just inches away from it with minimal eye protection. The welding rod he's using is cheap, probably not the right type for this metal, but it's what they have. He works methodically, building up the weld along the crack, trying to create a bond strong enough to hold under stress. Meanwhile, traffic continues flowing. A bus passes so close that it actually brushes against the repair van. Horns are honking constantly. Drivers are yelling curses out their windows. The pollution from all these vehicles is creating a toxic cloud around the work site. Bilal is supposed to be watching traffic and warning the team if a vehicle gets too close, but he's 19 years old, exhausted from the heat, and honestly, what could he do anyway? If a distracted truck driver veers into their lane, there's no time to get out of the way. The welding process takes over 2 hours. Rashid has to stop multiple times because the welding machine overheats or loses power. Each time he stops, the metal cools down, which isn't ideal for creating a strong weld. Professional welders will tell you that you want to complete a weld in one continuous process when possible. But out here on this highway with this equipment, that's not an option. Rashid does the best he can with what he has. His hands are shaking slightly, not from nervousness but from years of handling vibrating tools without proper gloves. He has nerve damage in his fingers, which makes fine motor control difficult. Yet he's performing a precision task that could mean life or death for the truck driver and others on the road. While Rashid welds, the others aren't idle. They're inspecting other components of the axle assembly, looking for additional damage or where that might cause problems. They find that the axle seals are leaking, which isn't surprising given the condition of everything else. Ideally, they'd replace those seals, but they don't have replacements with them. So Ahmed does what mechanics in these situations do. He improvises. He uses a combination of gasket material, sealant, and hope to try to reduce the leaking. It's not a proper fix, but it might buy the truck driver a few more weeks or months before the next breakdown. Everything about this repair is temporary, a band-aid on a system that's falling apart. But that's the reality for most trucks operating in developing countries. They're held together with improvised repairs, luck, and the skill of mechanics who can make miracles happen with almost nothing. Once the welding is complete, they can't just put the truck back down and drive away. The weld needs to cool slowly or it might crack again immediately. In a proper shop, they might heat treat it or at least let it cool in a controlled way. Here they just wait. But they can't wait too long because they're blocking traffic and the driver needs to get moving. So they pour some water on the weld to cool it faster, which makes it sizzle and steam. This rapid cooling could actually weaken the weld by creating internal stresses in the metal, but again, they don't have better options. After about 15 minutes, Ahmed decides it's cool enough. They begin the process of lowering the truck back down. Lowering the truck is just as dangerous as raising it was. The makeshift jack has to release slowly and evenly, or the truck could come crashing down. Bilal is again positioned in a dangerous spot, guiding the descent while basically trusting his life to equipment that looks like it should be in a scrapyard. The jack releases, the truck settles back onto its wheels, and remarkably, nothing catastrophic happens. The team does a quick inspection to make sure everything looks right. The weld is holding, at least for now. The wheels turn freely. The leaking from the seals hasn't gotten worse. It's time for the moment of truth, starting the engine and seeing if the repair will hold under load. The driver, who's been standing nearby the whole time looking stressed and smoking cigarette after cigarette, climbs into the cab. He turns the key and the big diesel engine rumbles to life. Black smoke pours from the exhaust, adding to the pollution cloud. He puts the truck in gear and slowly starts to move. Everyone watches tensely. If the weld fails now, it could destroy the entire rear end of the truck. But the truck moves forward, then backward, then forward again. The repair is holding. Ahmed nods, satisfied. The driver pays them in cash, probably a few hundred rupees, which is maybe $20 US for 4 men who just spent 3 hours doing incredibly dangerous work in hellish conditions. They pack up their equipment, throw it in their van, and drive off to the next emergency repair job. The whole scene leaves almost no trace. Just some metal shavings on the road and maybe a dark spot where the welding sparks burn the asphalt. Let's talk about what we just witnessed because there's so much to unpack here. First, the skill level of these mechanics is genuinely impressive. What they accomplished with minimal tools and no safety infrastructure is remarkable. Ahmed diagnosed the problem quickly, Rashid performed a decent weld under terrible conditions, and they got a broken truck back on the road in a few hours. In a proper facility with proper equipment, the same job would be easier and safer, but these men's skills shouldn't be underestimated. They're genuinely talented mechanics who've learned their trade through years of experience. But here's the thing that should make us all uncomfortable. Why should anyone have to work like this? Why should Bilal, at 19 years old, have to risk his life crawling under trucks in traffic? Why should Rashid, who already lost 3 fingers to this work, continue doing it without proper safety equipment? Why should Kareem work with a back injury that's never been treated because he can't afford medical care? The answer is brutal economics. These men do this work because they have no other options. They have families to feed, rent to pay, and no social safety net to catch them if they can't work. The truck driver uses their services because he can't afford the alternative. He's probably operating on thin margins, one breakdown away from bankruptcy. The whole system is built on desperation and exploitation. And let's talk about the safety implications for everyone else on that road. That welded axle housing might hold for years, or it might fail next week. If it fails while the truck is moving at highway speeds, it could cause a catastrophic accident. Other motorists who had nothing to do with any of this could be killed. This is the hidden cost of poverty and lack of regulation. When repairs are done this way out of necessity, everyone's safety is compromised. But who's going to change it? The government lacks the resources or will to enforce safety standards. Insurance companies barely exist in this informal economy. Truck owners are barely surviving financially. Mechanics are doing the best they can with what they have. The environmental impact is also significant, though it gets less attention. All those welding fumes, the exhaust from idling vehicles in the traffic jam, the oil and grease dripping onto the road, the metal particles being ground off and scattered, all of this is pollution that affects everyone nearby. The mechanics are getting the worst of it, breathing in metal fumes and diesel exhaust for hours. But people living near busy highways are also affected. Children playing near roads, street vendors selling food, everyone is breathing this toxic air. The long-term health effects are serious: lung disease, cancer, neurological damage. But these are slow-motion disasters that don't make headlines. The knowledge transfer system is also worth examining. Bilal is learning this trade by watching Ahmed and doing whatever he's told, even when it's dangerous. There's no formal training, no safety certification, no testing to make sure he's competent before he's put in life-threatening situations. He'll learn by trial and error, and hopefully he won't make a mistake that cost him his life or someone else's. In a few years, if he survives, he'll be training the next generation of mechanics the same way. The skills are passed down, but so are the dangerous practices and the acceptance of terrible working conditions. International organizations occasionally study these conditions and write reports about informal sector workers in developing countries. They document the dangers, the lack of protections, the health impacts. But these reports rarely lead to meaningful change because the problems are so deeply rooted in economic systems. How do you fix this? Do you ban roadside repairs? That would put these mechanics out of work and leave truck drivers stranded. Do you require safety equipment? They can't afford it. Do you build proper repair facilities? Who pays for that? There are no easy answers. Some people might say this is just how economic development works. Poor countries go through this phase and eventually, as they get wealthier, conditions improve. That's partly true. Western countries had dangerous working conditions during industrialization too. But does that make it acceptable? And with our current knowledge of safety practices and with the technology available, shouldn't we be able to help countries skip this dangerous phase? International aid could focus on providing proper equipment and training. Trade agreements could include labor standards. Technology companies could develop affordable safety equipment designed for these markets. But these things require political will, funding, and genuine commitment to worker welfare over short-term profits. The story of Ahmed, Bilal, Rashid, and Kareem is repeated thousands of times every day across Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, much of Africa, and other developing regions. Millions of workers in the informal economy perform essential services under dangerous conditions for minimal pay. They're the invisible workforce that keeps economies functioning. When we order cheap products online, some of them were delivered by trucks that were kept running by mechanics like these. When we marvel at affordable goods from developing countries, part of that affordability comes from the fact that workers there don't have the protections and safety standards we consider basic in wealthy countries. What happened to the truck after it drove away from that repair site? It probably continued working for weeks or months until something else broke. Maybe the welded axle housing held, or maybe it failed and needed another repair. The driver will keep pushing his truck until it literally cannot go anymore because stopping means losing income. And when it breaks down again, Ahmed or someone like him will show up and perform another dangerous roadside repair. It's a cycle that perpetuates itself, driven by economic necessity and lack of alternatives. So what should you take away from this story? First, an appreciation for how good most of us have it. If your car breaks down, you call AAA or a tow truck. You wait in a safe, climate-controlled environment. The repair happens in a proper facility by certified mechanics with insurance. These aren't luxuries, they're basic standards that everyone should have access to. Second, awareness that the global economy relies on millions of workers whose conditions we never see and rarely think about. Your cheap shipping, your affordable products, all of this is enabled partly by people working in conditions that would be illegal in your country. Third, recognition that these workers aren't looking for pity. They're skilled, hardworking people who deserve dignity, fair wages, and safety. The system that forces them to work this way is the problem, not the workers themselves. In our next video, we're going to explore another shocking aspect of roadside vehicle repair: the manual tire changing operations on highways where workers literally stand in traffic changing massive truck tires with minimal equipment. The dangers are even more extreme and the stories are equally compelling. You won't want to miss it. Until then, I want you to think about this. We live in a world of unprecedented wealth and technology, yet millions of people still risk their lives every day doing work that could easily be made safer with relatively modest investments. The barriers aren't technical. We know how to do repairs safely. The barriers are economic and political. It's about who we value and how we distribute resources. These roadside mechanics are as essential to the global economy as any worker in a high-tech facility, but they're treated as disposable. That's not right, and somehow it needs to change. The next time you're stuck in traffic and see a broken-down vehicle, think about the people who will have to fix it. Think about Ahmed, who'll spend his day crawling under trucks in the heat. Think about young Bilal, who's risking his future on a profession that could kill him. Think about Rashid, who keeps working despite his injuries because he has no choice. And think about whether the system that creates these conditions is really the best we can do as a global civilization. I don't have all the answers, but asking the questions is the first step toward finding them.